Hello, and welcome to Breezy's World. Well, not Breezy's World. I'm out of it today. Welcome to the True Crime Lounge. Today we are going to be talking about Megan Kanka and Megan's Law. This law I recently talked about in my laws that changed the law. True cases that changed the law. Before I get started, I want you to hit that like button, comment something you want me to talk about next, ring that bell with notifications, and subscribe. And also check out the merch shop down below. Alright, so what exactly is Megan's Law? Well, Megan's Law is a term for states that create and maintain a sex offender registry, and that make information on registered sex offenders. Federal law also requires convicted sex offender, or the victim is a minor, to contact local police about charges of changes of address and employment after being released from prison. To an extent, to which information is publicly available and determined by the states. The information is typically shared via social media platforms such as Facebook, public websites, or printed materials. So states' reporting requirements are enforced for at least 10 years, with some states requiring a um, lifetime reporting. So, and Megan's Law does differ depending on what state you live in, so look it up is what I would do. Because I live in Alabama, but it just varies each state. So what about a brief history of it? Well, the first Megan's Law appeared after the rape and murder of 7-year-old New Jersey resident Megan Kanka by a sex offender who lived in the girls' neighborhood. Soon after the passage of the first Megan's Law, the federal government implemented a requirement that all states establish sex offender registries and provide the public with information about registered offenders. Prior to Megan's Law in 1994, Congress enacted the Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act. This act requires states to maintain registries of convicted sex offenders to keep track of where they live after they're released from incarceration. Megan's Law amended this by requiring public notification. The Wetterling Act was named after an 11-year-old boy who was abducted by gunpoint by a masked man in Minnesota. His body was found 27 years later. Although police were able to save him, lawmakers hoped that the law passed in his name would help others. So what about in different states? Like I said, it varies in every state, but it's primarily around the same concept. So with each state's version of Megan laws differing slightly, not much though. They all require some form of sex offender registration and community notification. This information that states typically collect about sex offenders include offender's name, address, police, picture, and nature of the crime. States publish this information freely and available on websites that the public can query in many different ways. So, who was Megan Kanka? Well, she was a 7-year-old girl who was raped and murdered in July 1994. Her killer lived across the street from the family. Unbeknownst to the Kankers, the neighbor had past convictions for sex offense against 2 other little girls. Following Megan's death, her parents and others advocated for laws to ensure that people will be notified when there is a sex offender in their community. This became known as Megan's Law. So what happened to Megan Kanker? Well, on July 29, 1994, she disappeared from her neighborhood in Hamilton Township, New Jersey. A search after her parents found her abandoned bike on their front lawn. They were aided by several neighbors, including Jesse K. Timendakis, 33, who lived a street from them. I'm also going to do a separate video on him too. Um, as people continued to look for Megan, someone alerted the police about Joseph F. Saffelli, who lived with Tim and Dacus in a house owned by Saffelli's mother. In 1976, Saffelli had been charged with carnal abuse and sodomy of a 5-year-old girl. He was convicted of 3 lesser offenses. Police learned that Saffelli and Brian R. Jing, another roommate, was a convicted sex offender, had alibis. I'm just going to say Jesse for this part because I'm not attempting to say his name anymore. Jesse, who had been convicted of 2 separate sexual attacks on young girls in New Jersey, did not. Investigators found cut strips and clothes in garbage bags that he had handled, which Megan's mother recognized as the material from the shorts of her daughter that she had been wearing. So when they interviewed him, he initially denied the crime, but he eventually admitted to killing Megan. So he directed authorities to where her corpse was in Mercer County Park. Her body was found July 30th, 1994, 2 years before I was born. So over the course of multiple interviews, he told detectives that he invited Megan to his house to see a puppy. Once inside, he slapped her before sexually assaulting her. He admitted he strangled Megan to keep her from telling his mother that he touched her. He shared that he had been watching Megan play while living across the street, and he also said, "I would get sweaty palms when my heart would race." So, the criminal in the neighborhood. In 1979, before murdering Kanka, he assaulted a 5-year-old he asked to look for ducks with him. Following the attack, he agreed to plead guilty in attempted aggravated assault. He was offered a chance of a suspended sentence while in no jail time if he went to counseling. When he did not attend counseling, he ended up spending 9 months in Middlesex County Adult Correctional Center. So in June of '81, after being released, he was enticed by a 7-year-old girl in the nearby woods with him talking about firecrackers. He attacked and choked her, and then left the victim when she turned blue. The girl was unconscious but alive when her mother found her later. He pled guilty to attempted sexual contact and attempting to cause serious bodily injury. The maximum sentence of the charge was 10 years. The judge, who called him a, a compulsive, repetitive sexual offender who constitute a danger to the public at large and to young children in particular, imposed a full sentence. He went to an adult diagnostic and treatment center in Avondale, New Jersey, where sexual offenders were treated. While at Avondale, he reportedly did not engage in therapy session. He did meet his 2 future roommates, Janet and Saffelli. As was standard at the time, was released less than 7 years into his sentence. So after Kanka's death, learning the predatory criminal history devastated the family, Catherine Marsh, a prosecutor specialist in child abuse and sexual assault cases, told A&E True Crime the community was outraged that they had not been made aware, and this led to the creation of Megan's Law. Though her parents, Richard and Maureen Kanka, had lived in Hamilton Township for 16 years and they had no idea that convicted sex offenders lived so close. They said if they would have known, they wouldn't have let their daughter play outside without supervision. Soon after Megan's death, the Kankers and others began to press for the law to mandate community notification if a sex offender moved into the neighborhood. New Jersey's version of Megan's Law was signed by the governor at the end of October 1994, just months after her death. The Kankers continue to advocate for such and pass their own versions of Megan's Law. We have said all along that there was no law that was going to prevent every sexual assault on children. Richard Kanker said in 1995, but if it saves one child, it will be worth it. According to Maureen Kanker, what she said in 1996 was, I have no problem opening my heart and crying and being personal with strangers as long as I can open somebody's eyes. So on May 17, 1996, President Bill Clinton signed the Federal Virgin Megan's Law. The states could set their own parameters for notifications, and the laws require for all to have some sex registry available to public, so they could know when a sex offender is moved nearby. Laura Hearn, an attorney and the executive director of the Crime Victims Unit, tells A&E, Megan's Law gave an opportunity for children in the community to be made aware of those individuals so that they could take necessary precaution and protect themselves and their children from those offenders. So, on July 29th, 1994, 7-year-old Megan Kanker, I'm jumping ahead, I'm sorry guys. so, what exactly happened at her trial? Well, Jesse had lived with 2 other convicted sex offenders across the street from his victim. He lured the girl into his house by offering to show her a puppy. After raping her, he slammed her head onto the dresser, put 2 plastic bags over her head, and strangled her to death with a belt. He moved her body into the trunk, assaulting her once again before placing her body in a wooden toy chest dumping in nearby Mercer Park. The next day, he confessed to investigators that he led police to his site. Evidence including bloodstains, hair, and fiber samples, as well as a bite mark matching Megan Kanker's teeth on his neck, led to him being found guilty of kidnapping, 4 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and 2 counts of felony murder. Committing murder committing murder in the course of a felony. Well, 1 month after the murder, the New Jersey General Assembly passed a series of bills proposed by Paul Kramer that require all sex offender registries with a database tracked by the state community notification of registered sex offenders moving into the neighborhood, and life in prison without a chance of parole for those convicted of a second sexual assault. Kramer expressed incredulity at the controversy created by the bill, saying that Megan Kanker would still be alive today if the bills he proposed had been law. So Congressman Dick Zimmer stated, I believe he is exactly the kind of predator that the legislature has in mind and when enacted the death penalty. The court sentenced Jesse to death, and the sentence was upheld to the New Jersey Supreme Court on appeal. Jesse remained in New Jersey death row until December 17, 2007, when the New Jersey legislature abolished the death penalty. The ban resulted in Jesse's sentence being commuted to life in prison without parole. As of 2010, he is still incarcerated at New Jersey State Prison at Trenton. So what are the facts of the case? Well, as I said earlier, July 29, 1994, 7-year-old Kanker lived with her parents in Hamilton Township, diagonally across the street from the defendant. At about 5:30, the defendant lured Megan into his house, stealing to play with a puppy. He drew her into the bedroom while he attempted to sexually assault her. She screamed and she tried to escape, but defendant, fearing detection, would not let her escape. Megan fought for her life and defendant strangled her and later left her unconscious. During the struggle, Megan hit her face and her head on the floor, causing bleeding. To avoid stains on the carpet, The defendant placed a plastic bag over her head. He sexually assaulted Megan. Believing to be dead, he placed her body in a toy box and carried it downstairs. When he put the box in his truck, he thought he heard Megan cough. He drove to Mercer's County Park, took Megan's body out of the box, took her body out of the box and placed it in tall weeds before sexually assaulting her again. How sick do you have to be? Her family called the police and they didn't when she did not return home. So officers arrived in Joy neighborhood and searched for Megan. Defendants participated in search, handing out flyers with Megan's picture. Defendant told the police that he had seen her on her bicycle at 2:30. That statement conflicted with his prior statement to Maureen Kanka that he last saw Megan before dinner. Police asked the defendant if he seen Megan at any time, and he said he saw Megan riding his bicycle in front of between 5:30 and 6:30. The police obtained the consent of the homeowner, defendant's roommate, to search living quarters. They questioned the defendant again in the house, shaking and perspiring. Defendant said that he saw Megan and a friend at between 5 and 5:30 while he was washing his boat. The defendant then interviewed the defendant. The police then interviewed the defendant at the police station, where he gave a conflicting statement concerning his whereabouts during the time of her disappearance. Soon thereafter, he was released. So, the following day at the police headquarters, the defendant told the police that Megan was dead and he had left the body at Mercer County Park. He did so at the prompting of his roommate, also repeatedly denying involvement. Defendant led the police to the body inn. On the drive back to the police station, he recounted what happened. At the station, in the formal statement, he confessed to murder and some, but not all, aspects of sexual assault. After the police presented him with the results of autopsy, he provided further details of the sexual assault, the head injuries, and other conduct described above. Defendant did not testify to present witnesses on his behalf at the guilt phase of the trial, which was held May 5th to May 30th, 1997. The jury found him guilty of purposely or knowing murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 1 first-degree kidnapping, and 4 counts of first-degree aggravated assault. The penalty phase of the trial commenced on June 9th and continued to June 20th, 1997. The jury concluded that aggravating factors outweighed the mitigating factors beyond reasonable doubt. The court sentenced the defendants to death. So, in our review, we consider the testimony adduced at the penalty phase together with the evidence elicited at the guilt phase. The defendant offered 2 witnesses who presented evidence in mitigating circumstances in his background. So, Carol Crike, a forensic social worker, testified that the defendant's mother was a promiscuous alcoholic who had 10 children by 7 different men. The defendant's father was a violent drinker with a criminal history. She said, based on the information provided by the defendant's mother and that the defendant was raised in a poverty, the family lived for a time in the shack, and the defendant was often cold, hungry, and without adequate medical care. Other sources told that Quack told the defendant's father had sexually abused the defendant and his brother Paul frequently. The 2 brothers once saw their father rape a 7-year-old girl, that the father tortured and killed their pets, and that once forced the brothers to eat the pet rabbit. Gross. She also concluded that the defendant had a severely dysfunctional family life, and she added that the defendant had been diagnosed with emotional problems as a youth and classified as educable mentally retarded. but concluded a conflict exists with respect to classification. She also acknowledged that she had not testified on direct regarding academic reports indicating the defendant had made good progress in school, and further admitted that Paul originally said the defendant should not be sentenced to death and that she should have heard she had heard since he had changed his mind. So the defendant's expert, Dr. John Pomeroy, psychologist, relied on the Critch report but never evaluated the defendant personally. Pomeroy found the defendant suffered from pedophilia, borderline mental retardation, fetal alcohol effect, and schizophrenic personality disorder. He testified the defendant likely had generalized anxiety, perhaps including in post-traumatic stress disorder. He also expressed his opinion that at the time of the crime, the defendant was under extreme emotional disturbance and had this capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of his conduct that was very impaired. He also concluded that the defendant may have a serious brain abnormality, which would reflect a post-traumatic insult. Megan's death, said the psychologist, was caused by a reflexive response to panic defendant met when the victim attempted to flee. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. The state presented rebuttal witnesses, two detectives who testified to people that whom they spoke to the defendant. So the defendant's mother was not constantly intoxicated. The defendant's house was not substandard, and that the clothing was not disallowed. One detective testified that Paul told their father physically abused Paul and the defendant, and that their mother broke the defendant's arm when the defendant was 17. According to the detective, Paul gave several inconsistent statements regarding sexual abuse, at one point denying that he knew the defendant was being abused at all. So Dr. Robert L. Sadoff, a psychiatrist, said that there was no evidence to support the defendant's claims of extreme emotional abuse. In his allegation statement, the defendant said, "Okay, I am sorry for what I've done to Megan. I pray for her and her family every day. I ask you to let me live so I can someday understand and have an understanding of why something like this could happen. Thanks." Yeah, I don't believe you. So, what is the impact of Megan Kanker's murder? Well, according to Rain, speaking of Rain, if you buy any of the merch stores, certain stores will go shirts. Money made off that will go to Rain. But anyway, according to Rain, in case of child sexual abuse, 59% of perpetrators are acquaintances of the victims, while 34% are family members. So understanding who is present in your child understanding who is present in your child's life, including neighbors, is important in keeping children safe. Given the majority of child sexual abuse cases that are committed by someone, the child knows a family member, coach, neighbor, etc. When we can limit access to sexual predators to children, we can protect them, says Marsh. Ahern also believes that Megan's Law helped often open people's eyes to widespread societal problems. Megan's Law and sexual registration started at the process in people becoming aware of child sexual abuse. Yet it still happens. That's the sad part right there. And seeing sexual offenders in the community. So Megan's killer is currently serving a life sentence. Although he was originally sentenced to death, that changed when New Jersey eliminated the death penalty. So what about the expansion of it? Because remember, this started with Jacob Wetterling's crimes, which led to the Wetterling Act. And that called for registries of convicted sex offenders, but did not require community notifications. So Megan's Law was followed by other laws to protect children, like Federal Adam Walsh Child Protection Safety and Protection and Safety Act of 2006. Title 1 of that act was that sex offender registry notification. The Sex Offender Registry Notification Act, SORNA, and the Adam Walsh Act supplemented the expand Megan's Law. Marsh explained. So on February 8, 2016, International Megan's Law to prevent children of exploitation and other sexual crimes through advance notification of traveling sex offenders was signed into law by President Barack Obama. And this is commonly referred to as International Megan's Law. And this orders registered sex offenders to report international travel prior to departure. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. Check that merch shop out. I will see y'all next time.